This is the Art of Darkness podcast with Kevin Kautzman.
And Brad Kelly. We're a couple of very online writers interested in the dark side of what drives creative people to create against all odds.
This show is about art and the people who make it, what it costs them, and what it takes to bring something unique and impactful into the world.
Each episode, we excavate the life and work of an artist you might think you know.
Don't worry, they're all safely dead.
On every episode, we try and find out just what the hell was wrong with them and how they worked through their darkness to create something that lives on after them and continues to move culture.
Find us online at artofdarkpod.com and on Twitter at artofdarkpod.
Welcome back to another very special dark room. For those who know, and maybe those who don't, a quick refresher. Dark room is when we revisit one of our core episode subjects and we dive a little deeper. We maybe cover some ground we didn't cover. We bring in somebody who knows the subject better than us oftentimes, knows the subject a little differently than we do, and knows maybe a different part of this subject. And I think in this case, we've got all three we're bringing into the dark room. Oh, by the way, I'm Kevin Kautzman. This is Kevin Kautzman. I've done this before.
How many times are you going to do that? That's amazing. We're not editing a damn thing.
That's Kevin Kautzman.
I love
I'm pointing on YouTube. That's Kevin Kautzman. I'm Brad Kelly.
Bro, we are. No,
I
we
thought
are.
I was
we
Brad
are
Kelly.
Yeah, right.
Right. By the end of this, who knows? Yeah,
absolutely, dude. Oneness. We're all one. Yeah. We're all one. Introduce the guest, Brad.
Yes. And with us we have the great Seth Augenstein. He is the author of most recently a great historical novel, LAMA with a Gun, available right now. So get that. We're going to talk about it. Also, Project 137 from 2019. I don't know as much about that, but I'm sure it's excellent. Also, a number of short stories that you can find out there in the World Wide Web. One interesting note: Mr. Augenstein has a dog named Mishima, as far as I know.
I do indeed.
Yeah. So
okay.
This whole episode is really going to be about this dog named. We're going
a boy and his suicidal dog named Mishima, who chases.
You should have seen him out in the snow today.
He loved it.
Borderline suicide.
What breed is Mishima?
What's that?
Breed? What breed?
Oh, pit bull. He is a pit bull.
A pit bull named Mishima.
Yeah,
80 pounds.
Incredible.
And
an 80-pound pit bull. Okay.
80-pound kamikaze pit bull.
Nice.
Yeah,
sounds perfect.
He's pretty intense. And he is the most interesting in the household.
Very cool.
Wow.
Yeah, he's a good dog. Good little
awesome.
dog.
That's cool. Well, yeah. Well, so obviously the enthusiasm. I reached out to Seth and I was excited about Llama with a Gun, and I was like, Seth, here's what our show is. Who do you want to talk about? And he fired back with Mishima. And, this is the perfect subject. We went back and forth a little bit, and it turns out Seth knows maybe not as much as a person could know, but plenty. He knows more than me and Kevin put together by far. So I'm really excited to do this. But first, I want to talk about Llama with a Gun. So I've been reading it. It is and I want you to describe it, but just so I can give my praise, it is a page turner for people who like historical fiction. It's I think for people who don't read a lot, I think historical fiction brings to mind a certain kind of book a little bit. It can bring to mind for some people something a little dusty, something that's a lot about like throne room drama kind of, which can be great. This is not that. This is an action adventure spiritual journey story. And yeah, I'm just really excited about it. Seth, give us I want to have you just
wait.
Go ahead.
Why does the llama have a gun?
Everyone asks why the llama has the gun.
It's the hack question, but I'll be the hack.
Who is the llama? Why does he have a gun?
Who is the llama? Why does he have a gun? And also, very quickly, just get your plug in right away. Where can people find you? Where can people buy the book?
Oh, yeah. SethAugenstein.com and Seth Augenstein on Twitter. Or what are we calling it now? X or Muskville. I don't know.
It's
So
still
yeah,
Twitter.
those are the
It's
two
still
best
Twitter.
places to find me. Um, yeah, and I mean, the elevator pitch or cocktail party pitch when I'm telling my friends to buy the damn book. I tell them, it's the anti Dalai Lama. It's not llama clopping around on hooves and very furry and that kind of thing in South America. No, this is firmly historical fiction, a Buddhist monk, true historical figure who I happened upon um, through the I don't even know if they have it, the Barnes and Noble bargain bin. Do you remember like toward the registers they used to have the hardcovers that nobody would buy?
Mhm.
It was like $3.99 and it was some total piece of trash. As much as I will love a Mishima and high-minded literary stuff, I read absolute trash. You gotta mix it up a little bit. So it was like occult secrets of World War II or something. It was all Indiana Jones, Nazi mysticism, Holy Grail shit. So at any rate, that book cited a couple times this I cannot recommend this highly enough. This adventure novel, memoir, ostensibly kind of apocryphal, whether it's how true it is, but Beasts, Men, and Gods by Ferdinand Ostendowski. Um, Basically, a memoir of a Polish guy, an engineer who's caught in the middle of the Bolshevik Revolution, and he's got to go east instead of west. Um, and he's fighting bears. He's trying to create. He's trying to build fires. It's like half Jack London, half political intrigue. He's encountering all these really gnarly historical characters. One of whom is Ja Lama. In that novel, he's called, or memoir, he's called Pushagun Lama. Um, but his character was fascinating. He just appeared like maybe like a handful of times. He'd pop up. He'd like decapitate somebody, and it would be like a funny decapitation. It was like the most bizarre, amazing thing. Again, I recommend that book as highly as possible. Public domain. You
What
can
was it called? Beasts, Gods, and Men?
Beast, Men, and
Yeah,
Gods.
it's a great title. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. It was huge bestseller in its day. It sold out and was translated in every language known to man, but nobody remembers it because it's probably like half bullshit. So, um,
Right.
but doing the deep dive on this guy because I was like, I got to know more about this guy. I just want to read a book about him, and no real firsthand sources, and it was a lot of secondary sources. I ended up, going down the rabbit hole, amassing like 3 feet. I measure in feet sometimes with these topics. Foot stack of books, and just you look at the index, you're like, shit, he's only in 5 pages of this book. It's like, well, I got to find the next one. But I amassed enough, and basically what it turns into is basically a western. It's a western set in Mongolia. It involves mysticism, and you guys, I know you guys are fans. Like front of mind while writing it was that best western, I would say, western to end all westerns, Blood Meridian, and a bit of Sea of Fertility, as we're talking about Yukio Mishima with the mystical backdrop and magic running through everything. Um, and I mean, this corner of the world, like I think even like all the reviews of my book were like really complimentary, but they were like absolutely like, hey, this is really violent. Like, totally don't pick this up if you can't, if you don't, if you are of weak constitution. And I mean, just doing the research and even what's going on in that corner of the world now with the Uyghurs and China, with, there's a big debate whether genocide is genocide. This is a corner of the world that's like, it ain't a forgiven place. So it turned into this strange, magical, violent world where like laws fear to tread. I think that's one of the phrases I use.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so that's where I landed, and I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, and man, you've done a heck of a job. You certainly can write a page turner, and I could feel the research in there too. Like it's such an interesting project, conceptually to me from that angle. I mean, even when I was kind of first familiarizing myself, it's like, okay, yeah, this actually does make sense to have a Western in this part of the world. For my limited knowledge of history, it does make sense that this is how you what you could do. So yeah, so kudos to you, man. And people
Thanks.
out there, if this sounds interesting to you, go get that. Absolutely. And we'll have links to find Seth in the show notes for sure. What about can you tell us a little bit about Project 137?
Yeah, sure. That was a little history, not as much history. Like, Llama with the Gun's like all history. It's, I'm basically filling in the gaps in the record where I couldn't find years where he existed. But Project 137, based on that gnarly World War II history, Unit 731, very overlooked, very hush hush, and especially like I'm a connoisseur of conspiracy theories. I like to like sample them and throw them in the trash. This is like a proven one. Is that
Yeah.
basically we cut deals. The U.S. government cut deals with a lot of these war criminals, and we were like, "Hey, you guys have a pretty good bio warfare program. Like, we need that because the Cold War is starting." So, um, basically, I took that true history as far as we know it, which is documented, through Congress and everything, and extended it to the year, what the hell was it, 2078? I think
Oh,
another
okay.
50 years to go. And, a doctor trying to solve a bunch of really heinous crimes that are, a holdover from this cartel of bio warfare. So
Oh.
I think that's full of spoilers there, but, it's still good getting there, resolution.
Yeah. No,
Um,
that sounds interesting to me as well. And I'm pretty sure some people in the Art of Darkness audience that's gonna tickle their fancy. Absolutely.
yeah.
Every single conspiracy theory cannot be false. There are
Can't
too
all be
many.
wrong.
There are too
Yeah.
many. They can't
That's,
all be wrong. They can't
that's
all be wrong.
exactly.
Occasionally you hit one. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you aim in darts. You ever
Hmm.
play darts? You play cricket.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
you're aiming for like the 15, you get a bullseye.
Yeah.
Eventually,
Sometimes. Yeah.
enough throws. Yeah,
Yeah.
Sure.
entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
One of my personal things about conspiracy theories is that again, you could just take the whole constellation of them and put together, they are our modern digital folk tales. That's what
Hmm.
yeah,
they are. Even the true
Hmm.
ones,
Hmm.
because they fit into this other one. And in any case, I love it. I think it's so fascinating. And
Oh.
it's natural for storytellers to be drawn to these wonderful, modern stories.
Well,
They're
yeah,
ghost.
they're wonderful consolidations of fears and anxieties and wishes sometimes, right? And
And
it's like,
tropes and
yeah,
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 it's good
yeah, and they often
stuff.
tell you more about what people are feeling like than say who they vote for, So,
yeah.
yeah,
It's deeper seated, and
right,
you wonder what the Brothers Grimm would do with like flat Earth theory.
right,
Like the breadcrumb trail would just go off into space or something.
yeah, yeah,
Oh, that
yeah,
would
for
be
sure.
such. I'm not trying to detract from, and we're going to talk about it. We're talking about a great Japanese, storyteller here, Mishima, and I know you've brought some materials here. But it's like, how fun would that be to do a book of like oral history of what people believe about conspiracy theories, like offline?
Like a meta, yeah.
Be amazing.
Yeah,
That would be
it'd be
amazing.
absolutely incredible. That would be like a film. I would watch a film of like waking life, but it's just all, it's 12 different subjects talking about conspiracy theories. I would watch that. In any
Yeah.
case, that's for the
Ooh,
podcast down
all
by the
right. All right.
docks.
We're gonna start a
Yeah.
production company, get that going. That
Oh
That's
sounds
yeah,
great.
because
Yeah.
we don't have enough
sign me up.
projects spread. Yeah.
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So and so kind of segueing into talking about Mishima, I guess first, I know we've got a lot of stuff we want to talk about, but like first, um, if someone hadn't read any of him, why should they?
Oh, well, I
And
guess,
assuming they like reading,
yeah, yeah, because I mean, he ain't easy, right? I
right?
mean, it's not like, well, I mean, I'm sure another one of my heroes, Hemingway. Like, you can approach Hemingway perhaps a little easier because maybe you only get the first dimension of Hemingway. Mishima has these tortured sentences half the time and complex metaphors. Asian literature always seems to have these like, really arcane metaphors that just play on different levels. But no, I mean, I think he's so important because he is such like, for lack of a better cliche, like a canary in a coal mine. I mean, he's like kind of like precursor, like Instagram, TikTok. He's all about image. He's posing in death poses, as Saint Sebastian. And I mean, frankly, like what a splash he made on
Yeah.
his final day, right? I mean, I guess I'm spoiler alert. I'm giving away
Yeah, people listening to this, people probably know that he killed him. He he committed ritual seppuku at the very end of his life at the age of 45, I believe it was.
That is,
Um,
yeah,
under the well, and this is something maybe we can talk about a little bit, but under the um apparently as part of a coup attempt. I'm not sure how much of that was genuine, how much of it was theater or what. Maybe it's all of the above, but yeah.
yeah.
So yeah.
That's yeah. It probably is all of the above. There's a whole lot going on with this guy,
Hmm.
but yeah. I mean, and I mean, the work is tied up into this, right? Like he dated his final manuscript of this masterpiece. You know, I think by any measure, it's just an absolute, you know, world masterpiece. He completed it on the morning of that he
Yeah.
ended his life. And, in the years leading up to it, he's like, I will die when this is completed. And it's like, all right, Yukio, yeah, you're gonna go ahead and just, keel over right after that. Nobody, I think, saw this coming.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, it seems like I think maybe his wife said something. Oh, I didn't think he'd do it like right now, right
Right.
away.
Yeah. I thought maybe we'd go on a trip or something, and
That's
then
so
Every suicide obviously is unique. Every person is unique, but it strikes
yeah,
me that you have kind of obviously a spectrum of like where somebody who maybe things are going very, very poorly for them, and you can kind of go, okay, I understand. Why maybe you would want out. I mean, I think we can be sympathetic. Then you've got somebody like Mishima, where it's like you're on top, absolutely on top of the world. So it's the psychology of that is a lot more difficult to kind of grok for
Mhm.
sure. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
at least
even you guys did such a masterful job. Honestly, I think
thanks.
it was like 3 or 4 hours. You guys delved in and like hit like almost every angle of the biography and how it feeds into his work. Um, and I think they touched on it. It was like he was, even though he's 45 and he's this bodybuilder and he's jacked and he's like a finalist or he's in consideration for the Nobel Prize, he's top of the world. Like there was just like a wearing down of him, and this was like the final. I mean, all acts of suicide, right? It's like a final like seizing of control, right? Like
Mm.
that's you want to like do things on your own term. That's like, I guess the one option you have left is what you perceive it as.
But he
Um,
strikes me as somebody he was an open nerve. I mean, and he
Mhm.
saw
yeah,
that it didn't want to live in this world if he couldn't impress his will on it.
Mm.
So it's
yeah,
suicide as statement is pretty hardcore.
There's also a
yeah,
thing about his level of productivity and how much he churned out that, like, as a writer, he was like 150 years old.
yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean? There's just like, I mean,
yeah.
I could live to be 150 and I'm not going to write
It's
half as much as this dude did. So there's that's the thing that struck me is from a writer's standpoint, he actually is sort of like an old man by the end. Just that
and
the tetralogy, everything, from
and
Confessions of a Mask up.
and even like they started putting out translations because there is kind of this like resurgence of interest in this guy, and they've been translating like these little bite-sized books recently just in the last couple years, like even during the pandemic a couple of them came out, and
Mm,
they're really good. They're kind of weird, like
mhm.
they're like little pop novels, and they're not real deep a lot of the time. And so and they he was writing them as he was writing the tetralogy. So yeah, like to your point, he wrote like he was a couple writers in one, probably not only chronologically, but in his headspace.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's true. Yeah, he certainly had, and he was writing the plays, and it did seem like he could just like turn the knob to like, all right, well, this one's going to be like mainstream, and then this is going to be for the
Yeah,
theater, and then this is going to be a real novel, and then yeah, it's
yeah,
just
yeah.
yeah. So I definitely want to get into the Sea of Fertility tetralogy. That was we were kind of batting back and forth, like where can we kind of focus this? And this was your suggestion, which I'm really happy for eh, because of his level of productivity. In my preparation for the core episode, I kind of had to pick my battles a little bit on what to read, and I didn't really get to read as much of that as I would have liked. So I guess kind of just jump in wherever here. What is the Sea of Fertility?
Yeah, like well, even I mean just the way I got into it like in my 20s, and it's like a lot of people in their 20s don't get into this, right? Because it's like this huge hard masterwork. But like I did have a professor who was like I was in like Saul Bellows' last class.
Oh,
Um
wow.
And like the co-professor was this guy Keith Botsford, and like you know Botsford was kind of full of shit a lot of the time. Like he'd tell you stories, and you're like, I don't think you hung out with that guy. But like you go to that Nathan biography that you guys cited in like at length, and yeah, like he was friends with the guy. Like the guy was like his first kid's godfather. Um, and like this professor of mine, Botsford, tried to produce a play of Mishima's, and like he totally failed in this Broadway adventure. So like basically like they were on the outs, even though they kept up, and some of what I can say later is related to what Botsford would tell me about Mishima, even though we never learned. At any rate, yeah, that's how I got into it.
Okay. Okay.
Delving into the Sea of Fertility in my 20s, yeah, it was kind of head spinning. I think I've read the thing like maybe like 3 times now. I think
Wow.
just yeah, in my 20s, 30s, and 40s. So, and I get something different every time, like I
Wow.
think most masterworks. Um, so the elevator pitch for Sea of Fertility though is awesome. It is awesome. Like I'm surprised it hasn't been made into a Netflix series, um, because it's one guy, in this case Shigakuni Honda, um, watches a soul be reincarnated through the course of his life, and the soul keeps dying at the age of 20. So through the 4 books, he sees 4 reincarnations of the soul. And the first one in Spring Snow, which I would say is like a story of star-crossed lovers, his best friend is this is in like the 1910s in Japan. So it's like this very strange westernizing culture. Um, and his friend Kiyowaki, Matsuge, is it's his best friend and has like no real interests or passions in life. He's just kind of this disaffected youth, right? Um, and they both have this mutual acquaintance, Satoko, um, and he falls in love with her by hook and by crook. It's like this kind of comedy of errors, but he finally has that passion, and then he gradually dies as he's trying to go finally profess his love for her at her nunnery, because she's cloistered now. She's become a nun. Um, and when he gets pneumonia on a winter trek to the nunnery, they take him back to the hospital, and like the last thing he says to Honda, his best friend who's watching all this, is say like, "See you beneath the falls." He's like,
Hmm.
"What the hell does that mean?" Um, so that's again like 400 pages to get there. It's not easy going, that especially that first book, because it's like it's that kind of like comedy. You have to know a little bit about Japanese aristocracy, like the little manners that are going on. It's not that easy to get into.
Yeah,
One of
there's a lot of subtlety. It's very well done, but it is subtle. I was listening to the audiobook version over the last week, and it's like this is very all of everything is very delicately arranged in this book. Yeah. And
like
it's beautifully done. Yeah.
yes, not easy to read. I would
Mm.
say not easy to break in. But the second book, and each of these has its own merits and demerits, because it's such a messy, sprawling masterwork, I would say. Second one's Runaway Horses. I'd say that's like a straight up like action military conspiracy thriller, like 1930s Japan, rapidly like going fascist, whipping itself up into what would become, island hopping, the wrong way. And Shigakuni Han is middle aged at this point, and he's married without kids. He works like as a judge of some kind, and he encounters this Isao. Kid's name is Isao, who has the same 3 moles on his side that Kiwaki his best friend did. So he immediately becomes interested, and he notices these moles while he's seeing Isao bathing under a waterfall. So you're like, oh, here we go, like the kind of supernatural reincarnation. And so like Isao is like really fiery young person. He's like again 18, 19, leading up to that crucial
Right.
20. And he's a kendo master. Kendo's the bamboo swords, like you kind of play fighting.
Mhm.
But he wants to live and die purely for the emperor.
Mhm.
So when Isao's arrested for setting up the assassination plot to take out like all sorts of ministers across Japan, um, Honda is like, no, I'm going to save this kid, and resigns from his judgeship and represents Isao in court.
Mhm.
And you know, he like gets him some kind of pardon or some kind of like parole release, and of course Isao goes off and he assassinates the one minister. Um, and but for that, he does have Isao does have a dream about being a woman in the prison. It's one of these weird like
Oh,
drifting point of view sections. So you see where this is going. Um,
right.
but yeah, he assassinates the minister, and then it's the scene that was much quoted, I think, after like Mishima actually offed himself, was he describes Isao killing himself as the sun's rising on the cliff. And it's actually pretty gross and bleak. So
Mhm.
you wonder what actually went through Mishima's head when he was actually doing himself. But
Right. Yeah, I
so
wondered that thinking about when Mishima did it. Like, forget my personal understanding of it and desire, lack of desire to do such a thing. I wondered at that moment for him, did it feel like, but what was there a relief? Did it feel like apotheosis? No one will ever know, but you
Well,
feel
but
one at
that's
a
in
moment
the
that
great
that's.
Paul Schrader film, the very end of it, that's the moment. And then we
Mhm.
go away from him and it's like unknowable. He goes to
Mhm.
a place that
yeah,
none of us can follow.
Right.
Really, not
Right.
really.
Yeah.
Very few
Yeah.
people. Has anybody, I wonder how many people have committed seppuku since Mishima. It can't be more than 50.
Right. Right. It's a
Right.
handful of people. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
very few
Yeah.
and far between. And people probably learned something from his attempt because, like, I mean, the gross detail is that, like, what I forget the term. They have the second who's supposed to, like, basically limit your suffering. Like, he took a couple whacks and he didn't do the job. And that's
Yeah.
like they reported that pretty extensively, and another guy had to come in and actually do the coup de
Yeah.
grace.
Yeah, and
So
I think we
Yeah.
said on the core episode, it's that is the ultimate. You had one job.
yeah,
You
that's oh my
had
god,
one job.
that's
If I was that guy and I wasn't planning on it, I might commit seppuku
yep,
right
that's
after that. Just like, that's a pretty big
My
boot.
my best guess
shame.
is that he felt like he was channeling the samurai.
Hmm.
He was so for him. I'm sure it was religious. It
Hmm.
was spiritual
Hmm.
somehow.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
that's
I'd
my
agree with
best
that.
guess. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, ugh, yeah,
yeah,
no,
very
mm,
messy, very
oh,
messy,
indeed, yeah,
regardless.
no, no
Um,
bueno, no me gusta.
but
So then we go from the runaway horses, and then what is next after that?
oh yeah, the Temple of Dawn, and
Okay.
that's man. If spring snow is kind of impenetrable, the Temple of Dawn a little out there too, because that's where Shigekuni Honda, like successful like merchant at this point, and this is like World War II, kind of like pre-World War II into the 50s, and he's like businessman, he's swinging deals international across the Eastern Hemisphere, whatever, and there's so much abstract philosophy and like book of Buddhists, like reincarnation, and that's where he's really digging into like when am I going to see my ex best friend, former protege again. And of course, like he's on a business trip to Thailand, and then there's a little like crazy princess, they call her, I think, mad princess, named Ying Chan. She's like 3 years old at that point, and she like immediately recognizes him, and it's like one of the chilling parts of the book, right? Like she's like they do it through a translator, but like the girl like leaps out of her throne and like clings onto his leg, and she's like chattering away in Thai, and he's like translate, translate, and she's like, I'm so sorry, Mr. Honda, like I meant to tell you, like I shouldn't have done that, and like you got to take me back to Japan. The way
Wow.
it's written and it builds up to that, and it's like it's not expected at that point in the book. It's like
Sure.
one of the key moments there.
Well, and
Um,
it seems like Mishima's taken more than two books to like. It seems like maybe up to this point, is the reincarnation thing really happening, or is it sort of Honda projecting onto it? And this is like the monster, it's actually happening.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting.
That is one of the key links that would make one think
Yeah.
at that point.
Interesting.
And and then the princess grows up. She's super beautiful, but she doesn't remember any of this, as she's like getting into her teen years, whatever. And he does come to study in Japan. And Honda, like I gotta say, the best part of the novel, as you reread it, especially now in middle age for me,
Mm.
white hair aplenty, is watching Honda like become like from this like straight A student to like this corruptible lawyer to here he starts getting involved in like voyeurism, like he starts
Mm.
getting a little perverse, and that's he has to confirm that Ying Chan is like the reincarnation again, and like so he's got to see the three moles, so like he like sets up like a love affair between him and like his like buddy, his like woman buddy,
Mm.
and spies on them through a peephole in his like guest room, and then
Wow.
like there's some action in there because like the house burns down that night. You're like, how did the house burn down? So there's action going on. He's
Yeah.
actually twisting threads. And then the final denouement, the decay of the angel is the fourth book, and that's like I skipped over. Ying Chan goes back to Thailand, gets bitten by a snake, dead age 20.
Ah,
So
right.
you
Right.
know,
The cycle
that's
continues. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So decay of the angel. Toru is this. It's from his point of view too. It gets weird. Like some
Hmm.
points of view start drifting. You guys would find it really interesting. It's all of a sudden he's like drifting away from Honda. Then why
Hmm.
is he doing this?
Right.
The effect is really good. But yeah, Toru's this kind of like um, again disaffected, but like he's kind of a weird, off-putting character, and he's like a lighthouse signalman. And he's constantly like hounded by this ugly girl that she's described as ugly. And like so Honda rolls up on the lighthouse and he like notices the moles and he's like, I'm adopting that kid. He just goes right for it. And then Toru, like it becomes like Pygmalion, right? Like he's trying to train Toru to be like a rich person's son and all this. And Toru becomes like an absolute shithead. Like he becomes like corrupted and he's like beating Honda up. He's stealing money and everything. And then basically like Honda's friend tells Toru like no, you have to die at 20. That's why Honda like you know
Hmm.
adopted you. And then so Toru, I'm giving the whole show away, but that's why we're here.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Spoiler alert. If you really want to get,
yeah that's
yeah, if you really want to read yourself up to this, just skip ahead a little bit.
yes, yeah, exactly. So they tell like the friend of Honda like tells Toru like yeah, you're gonna die at 20. So Toru just tries to take matters in his own hands, seize control, and he poisons himself, but he goes blind. So
Oh
he's all
no.
like he becomes like discolored and he's all jacked up,
Hmm.
and blind. And he like just kind of sits around and lives with the ugly girl.
Hmm.
And his 20th birthday passes and he becomes 21 and like nothing happens. So Honda's like, I was wrong the whole time. So Honda, feels that like he has to like go to the source of this. So Honda, in the meantime, is becoming terminally ill, but does nothing about it. He's one of these illnesses where like he knows something's wrong, he's putting off the doctors. His one remaining friend is like, you got to get treatment. So he skips the crucial hospital appointment and he goes to visit the initial love interest, Satoko, at the nunnery. And he's going to just commiserate with her, like,
Hmm.
Kiwaki. Um, and she's now like the abbess. She's the head of the nunnery. Um, and so in the crucial moment, and this is where the ambiguity comes in, and I would say like the absolute mastery, beauty, what have you. Um, he confronts her, and she's like, "I don't know who you are, and I don't know who Kiyoaki is. I I
Hmm.
I don't know any of these people that was in my past life. I don't remember." Even some of these passages. I mean, maybe we should get into this.
Yeah.
Um,
Is there a bit you want to read? Would a bit you would like to read? Maybe
yeah, I think
you love to
so.
read on the pod. Yeah.
I think so because No, Mr. Honda, I have forgotten none of the blessings that were mine in the other world, but I fear I have never heard the name Kiyoaki Matsuge. Don't you suppose, Mr. Honda, that there never was such a person? You seem convinced that there was, but don't you suppose that there was no such person from the beginning anywhere? I couldn't help thinking so as I listened to you. Why then do we know each other? And the Ayakuras and the Matsuges must still have family registers. Yes, such documents might solve problems in the other world. But did you really know a person called Kiyoaki? And can you say definitely that the two of us have met before? I came here 60 years ago. Memory is like a phantom mirror. It sometimes shows things too distant to be seen, and sometimes it shows them as if they were here. But if there was no Kiyoaki from the beginning, Honda was groping through a fog. His meeting here with the abbess seemed half a dream. He spoke loudly as if to retrieve the self that receded like traces of breath vanishing from a lacquer tray. If there was no Kiyoaki, then there was no Isao, there was no Ying Chan, and who knows, perhaps there has been no I. For the first time, there was strength in her eyes. That too is as it is in each heart.
Oh,
So, so and then the next scene is, but I won't read the whole thing because I think people should experience the full breadth of the passage. But like he, the last few lines, he goes out into the garden and it's just this absolutely sunbathed but like kind of strangely cold um, landscape, and it's just it's beyond his point of view. Even he says it was a bright, quiet garden without striking features, like a rosary rubbed between the hands. The shrilling of cicadas held sway. There was no other sound. The garden was empty. He had come, thought Honda, to a place that had no memories, nothing. The noontide sun of summer flowed over the still garden. And then that's, the last words, the end. The Sea of Fertility,
right.
November 25th, 1970. Um, so
And wow,
how
there's
does
so
that
many
strike you?
there's so many strong little bits in these two parts that you read. I just revisit them briefly. Just I love good good writing. So let me just the one memory is like a phantom mirror. It sometimes shows things too distant to be seen, and sometimes it shows them as if they were here. That's beautiful. And then all this also this metaphor. He spoke loudly as if to retrieve the self that receded like traces of breath vanishing from a lacquer tray. I mean, that's such a perfect little image. And it encapsulates so much. I mean, you know, even I almost imagine this so has so like I don't know that much about like Japanese tea ceremony, but I can
Yes.
imagine this is a part of a Japanese uh environment, home environment that I can picture. It's like I can see the whole thing. It's so good. And of course the last lines there are just kind of haunting. And then you have to remember, I mean, part of the reason we do this show is we're thinking about the artist and the work. You have to basically imagine Mishima writes that and then
Mhm.
walks outside to his end, right?
He sure did. Yeah,
And
it's
if
it's stage right.
And he has an
Yeah.
image of the rosary at the very end as well. Just so
yeah,
unusual.
yeah,
He's thinking about in the rosary when you know how he ends his life. I don't want to get to be too oh, I don't know, but I mean, what are you talking? You're talking about pulling your guts out of your
Yeah.
stomach and blood and the blood of the mother. And here comes my son.
yeah. Yeah.
Perfect.
No, he was literal as a little boy just ran through my
Oh,
head.
that's
Uh but yeah, no, that's a good point too. Yeah, where exactly is that coming from? And I think if someone were to have a simplistic perspective of Mishima, especially that final move in his life, I think they would assume if you were to ask them, hey, what do you think the last scene he ever wrote was? I think it would be something more violent, more political,
yeah.
more something. It wouldn't be this.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
Especially after like he wrote the death scene in that second book. And then this one's like, this is the beyond.
yeah,
This is something like him coming to peace almost with his own end.
yeah,
Um, and I mean, that's like as I've read this tetralogy, over now decades, I guess, into
Mhm.
middle age. Um, the initial take I had as a 20-year-old man, I was like, oh, Honda's terminally ill. He dies on his way up to the monastery or the nunnery, right? There's
It's
one
all,
particular part where like it's like suddenly he's like out of breath and like he's describing dead trees and everything. And then it takes on a weirder tint. Like the prose takes on a weirder flavor. I was like, boom, he dies there and he's entered into his own kind of reincarnated existence, which
yeah,
I think that works.
yeah,
I think that's legit. But then there's like, you read the biographers, like you guys mentioned at length, like and especially the other biographer, the British biographer Stokes, who was like his
mhm.
friend, but not as much of a friend as the other biographer that you guys.
Yeah, John Nathan. Yeah.
Yeah, Stokes said like the whole ending was like a joke. It was a joke perpetrated on his reading public. He was like, I am into like swordplay, the Shield Society, the action, and the coup. And
Yeah.
this book is like I'm just pissing it away, and it's like the work means nothing. And it's like,
Mm.
okay, I think you could say that. I mean, even like Mishima said at one point, like I mean, the whole title, right? Like Sea of Fertility is like I think he even the quote was like he named it after like the Sea of Fertility is intended to suggest the arid sea of the moon that belies its name. I
Mm.
might say that it superimposes the image of cosmic nihilism on that of the fertile sea, which kind of
Mhm.
jives, right, with like the garden becoming this like strangely loud but like sunny, like kind of lifeless. It's like this weird alien planet.
Yeah.
Um,
And would jive with the whole project being a little bit of a joke, right?
yeah,
I mean, yeah, if you're
it
going to call
totally
it,
does.
it's yeah, it's like calling Greenland. It's like calling Greenland Greenland. It's
Yeah, that's
like,
right. Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. Hey, the joke's
yeah,
on you guys. Like you made it through like 1,500 pages of like this in-depth, you
yeah.
know, literary
Well,
masterwork.
and he
Well,
did
and
write
it's
a
also could be like, well, and if it's a meta joke, there is a quality of just like total onanism in the literary thing,
You know,
where you're just masturbatory. You're in your own head. You think you're in Mishima's head, but you're really in your own. He could
mhm.
be. Strikes me as somebody who could be operating at that level.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
well,
And delighting in fucking
mhm.
with people to be like, yeah, this
and,
is I made you sit through
and
this.
he
This is
Mm,
my
and he did in
hmm
Sun and Steel. I don't have the quote handy, but he did in Sun and Steel definitely start to express a what would the word be? A distrust or a perspective on writing that it was incomplete or even, deleterious to like truly living in some way. I mean,
yeah,
there could be I could and he's a difficult guy to understand,
yeah,
but I could see him like making the whole point of like it's all bullshit. See, I can do this for 1,500 pages and at the end I can just sort of
yeah.
um yeah,
And even
really.
to back up what you're saying is like he had like according to the Nathan biography, like there was an art exhibit at like this department like right before the Sea of Fertility, ended and before the seppuku and everything. And he was talking about like four rivers, the river of books, the river of the theater, the river of the body, and the river of action. And it was
Mhm.
clear like there's like a whole sort of, but it's like basically like the river of action is the superior one. That's like the culmination. And it's like, okay, like I think he's
Yeah.
really like this was a big joke. He's like, fuck you guys, I'm out.
hmm
The way of action is the way of
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm reading it in my 40s. I think it's actually like it's an even deeper, like I barely even struggle to wrap my mind around it or words around it, but like it's like his authorial statement, right? Like on the fact that like he created this whole world, he is the god of this world, and he made you feel something for like 1,500 pages. And along those 1,500 pages, he had you believing like in reincarnation, he's taking you through Japanese history. You're seeing this guy go from like straight A student to like this corrupt, disgusting, voyeur. And yeah, I mean, he said like, the final written line, like aside from the manuscript, like on his desk, supposedly was like, human life is limited, but I would like to live forever. That
hmm
was like his. actually final line, like on a whatever nap or something.
Right, right.
And he did, right? Like that is like literary immortality. So like as much as like it looks like, hey, this guy like, perpetrated a joke, you could read it as, and then like offed himself to like put a final splash of blood on that statement. It's like actually like I think it is like he was just punctuating the literary work. I think
Yeah,
he actually was like this. I can't do better than this. If anybody can do better than this, go for it.
yeah, yeah. Very
Um,
interesting. I'm finding really poignant. So, if you could just re-describe a part of the plot. So I think you were saying the in the final book, the latest incarnation is this sort of troubled young man that Honda immediately adopts. And
yeah,
then another character informs this orphan that Honda believes he's going to die when he's 20. Is that right?
yeah,
And
yep,
so
yep,
so so the orphan just decides to take into his own hands. There is something kind of very touching about that. And I do see this literally as somebody else in middle age, where it's sort of like sometimes the things that you've sort of tried the hardest to do you've screwed them up because they were the thing you tried the hardest to do somehow.
yeah.
There's parts of
That's
life that are like, have you ever dropped something fragile? And in
yes,
trying to catch it, you knock it back up into the air and you make
that's
it way worse,
yes,
And it might
all
have
the
been
time,
okay if you hadn't
every
have messed
day,
with it. Yeah.
every day.
Yeah. Sometimes aspects of life feel like that, where it's like, man, maybe if I wouldn't have been. So that there's something touching to me about that, just as like almost like an irony of our loves and our interests and what we take on as our responsibilities, whether or not we even are capable of doing it, or even if that responsibility, it's even possible to take on that responsibility.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's very
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. And
Yeah.
the whole work, all four books, is chock full of those little like occasionally funny. Like it's not a laugh riot. It's you're not going to go to
Mhm.
Mishima for like out and out comedy. He's like kind of ham fisted when he tries it most of the time. There are
Yeah.
amusing little parts, amusing little like situational ironies. It's like it's the full gamut of the human experience. I think he did it. He did it.
Yeah.
He,
Yeah.
he captured a couple generations like a mouse.
Yeah. Yeah. How long did he take writing these?
I would have to go back to the notes, but I'm pretty sure he started in 66 or 65.
Oh my God,
And
it's 4 or 5 years.
yeah, but in the meantime, he was writing all these other books that were like the little throwaways to like, you
Man,
know, um,
I feel like,
yeah.
Seth, I don't know about you, but as a novelist, it makes me feel a little bit of a slacker. Like, I know I'm trying, but like,
That's
dang.
well, that's even like I'm always fascinated. I'm sure you are too, like by the habits, writers
Mhm.
always they're always asked about.
Yeah.
And yeah, he would sit down at midnight, and I think he'd like write till like 4 or 5 a.m. Like he was a
Yeah.
total maniac. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
to Kevin's point, like yeah, he was a live nerve. He just like couldn't shut down. Just
Yeah.
like did he sleep even when he was
Yeah.
sleeping?
Right.
Probably not.
Probably just going, going, going. Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. Um, we got well, we're gonna at some point we're gonna close this down. We're gonna move to the Patreon portion, the After Dark, where we're gonna talk about the film he made,
That went
Patriotism.
so
It
fast.
did.
That
We
was
got a
just,
cou-
this
I got
was
a I
this
got
was
a couple other
yeah,
questions for
but
Seth
yeah,
though.
but this was exactly the amount of time it took for Mishima's second to chop his head off. Can
Including
you
the
imagine?
abortive attempts. Yeah, that's
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh my
Oh
God.
so
God,
gross.
Max,
So gross.
Max cringe, Max pain, terrible.
Uh,
Oh, we laugh so we don't cry on this
yeah.
pod.
Oh, that's for
Yes.
sure.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
For
boy.
sure.
Mm.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about a film that Mishima made, Patriotism. And we're also going to talk about, which people can watch. It's out there. It's floating around on YouTube, but we're going to talk about it a little bit. And we're also going to talk about a little anecdote about Mishima's sexual proclivities as described in a biography. Might be true, might not be true. It's certainly interesting, and it's perhaps a little what would the word be? a little titillating.
Salacious. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We're gonna save that. We're gonna save that for Patreon supporters at patreon.com/Art of Dark Pod. But before we get there, Seth, I do want to ask you. There's a lot of other work in addition to the Sea of Fertility, and of course, for handing out reading assignments, I think that's probably the first place to go is the Sea of Fertility. But are there what are the other Mishima works that you find best? What could you put up there on that same shelf?
One of the newly translated minor works I thought was really good, The Frolic of the Beasts. That
Oh,
came
okay.
out like just in the last couple of years. And then I think you guys even mentioned Temple of the Golden Pavilion is like really dense.
Hmm.
It's really, really good for the
Hmm.
Misha Oeuvre. I will say that the one that I've gone back to, audiobook, whatever, The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea. I mean, it has, for my money, the absolute best ending line, period. It
Oh,
includes,
yeah.
isn't it pretty to think so? It includes, like, and so we beat on boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. Like, it's as good as those.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I would recommend that one. Like,
Yeah, no, those are both. Those are, and what was the other one? The
Frolic of the Beasts.
Frolic of the Beast. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll look for that. Another thing I wanted to ask you is, what do you make of? And sometimes it's difficult to tell how true this actually is, but what do you make of the Mishima resurgence? I'm assuming it seems like there is one. What do you make of it? Why is it happening? What does it mean? Whatever thoughts you have on that.
That's man, that's the $64 question on X, Twitter, Muskville, whatever.
Right, right, right.
Yeah,
Well, that's part of the problem is it's like I spent a month typing Mishima into Google every day, and now, I suddenly it seems to me like there's a resurgence. Like, I don't know, but
no, there kind of is. There kind of is, and I mean, it's like there's obviously people who like are like not even hardcore right wingers, but they're like they identify with him and like what he's like standing for, or what they think he stands for. And
Mhm.
again, as a side note, I don't think I buy any of the politics, like the fascistic coup. I think that kind of like that was part of the set piece for him to do what he was going to do anyway.
That's the
Um,
conclusion I kind of came to too, was the politics were, if anything, they were sort of a sideline or an asterisk. Yeah.
yeah, a means to an end,
Hmm.
literally. And yeah, that professor I mentioned, Botsford, like he totally poo-pooed that, and
Hmm.
he said like whatever, it was just, playing soldier. I forget how he said it, but
Hmm.
and that professor, by the way, as a side note, like he had this like pirate voice. He talked like this. And he always said like we'd be like, yo, what was like Mishima like? Young dudes fascinated with the dude who killed himself on the day he published his masterpiece. He said, "Oh, Mishima was a pederast. He wasn't a bad one. He never acted on it." And it's like, okay, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
But so yeah, at any rate, that's a side note. But no, he speaks to us because, and he is resurging in popularity, partly because of his splashy death, partly because he did write amazing work, and it is like one hopes that the good stuff lives on no matter
Hmm.
what, right? Um, so I think a mix,
Yeah.
politics, the pose, and man, he had the goods. He had the
Yeah.
goods.
Yeah. You could back it up for sure. That's the most important thing. It is good to see a resurgence of something that actually is worth it. And yeah, you could get,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, in masculinity is like horribly in crisis,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think this is a fellow who speaks to that in a wild, kind of intense, immediate way. And he's not that far away. He feels somehow ancient, protean, but
Yeah,
he did this in 1970. The Beatles were
already
in
broken up.
full swing. Yeah, were
Yeah,
they already broken up? Yeah, they were
Yeah.
already broken
Yeah.
up. Yeah, you're
Right.
right. Yeah, yeah, the Beatles were done.
yeah,
Crazy. So, yeah, Zeppelin was on the way. I
yeah.
mean, when he
That's
Yeah.
did
right.
this, yeah,
Yeah,
nuts, nuts.
Yeah, yeah, and I suppose you're right, Kevin. And I think too, it's like if there is something like a search for meaning going on, if that is something that's happening, and I think that's true, there is a way where it's like, well, certainly Mishima had an idea of what the meaning of like, what I mean? It's very extreme, but maybe it's like I can understand that one, not to incorporate it, but maybe it tells us, I don't know, something about how you can make your life meaningful. I don't know.
I think both those are great points. Yeah, definitely. It seems like, yeah, men much more are drawn to him. right?
Mhm.
Whether that is like, he was jacked and he was a Nobel Prize finalist and he checked out the day of his match dates. It's like it's hard to beat that storyline.
Pretty
I
hardcore.
think wasn't it Paul Schrader, I think, said like when he was like making the movie, he's like, if Mishima didn't exist, I would have had to have created him. It was like
Yeah.
the most pretentious thing ever, but I was like, actually, I get why Paul Schrader of Taxi Driver fame would say something like that because
Mhm.
it's like, holy shit, this was a story to beat. So
Yeah, no, I mean Paul Schrader's his all of his best movies are about like that sort of
Well,
apotheosis through final violence, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
what I mean, I'm thinking a lot about Werner Herzog right now. I just read his memoir and I'm getting ready to write a review of it. And his entire body of work to me seems to be about the the turn into industrialization and the
yeah,
anxiety that we feel about modernity, right? It sounds like a cliche, but like if you look at Werner Herzog's body of work, it's all there. And I think Mishima, and we all feel that anxiety. And now we've all many of us didn't even get to have a modernity. Like
yeah, yeah,
modernity was expensive. And so a lot of us have been ripped right off the shtetl or right off the farm and
Mhm.
thrust into whatever this is here right now.
And we get to
And
watch modernity through a screen in front of us.
well,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
yeah,
yeah, right. Isn't that funny? Yeah,
We get to
yeah. And
spectate it.
it's very,
Yeah.
very, and it's all tied up in class and regionalism and everything else. But there's Mishima, and there's a guy who like a truly in the Nietzsche, maybe the Nietzschean sense, an untimely man, a man
Mhm.
who like lived outside of time, who ripped himself out of time in the
yeah.
course of his own life, and so he
Here, here.
stands as an example for us. I mean, you think about I think about my own modest career as a playwright and how that system has become taken over by the academy and by
Yeah.
Yeah,
institutions, and we've all been turned into house pets, and kind of you want
Mhm.
it puts you in a position where you're almost made to grovel whether or not like it's ever stated. And like here's Mishma is like, nope, I've got my own
Right.
I've got my own
yeah,
militia. I'm
yeah.
Yeah.
putting
It's
on
like,
my plays. I'll be
Well,
putting on my plays now. Thank you.
right. Well, and
yeah,
there is something to
real.
it
He
too.
just did
Again,
it.
like
Pure action.
yes, yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I was going to get to. It's like forget about the seppuku for a second, but just like there is this example of like, yeah, what if you just did the thing that you were supposedly about? What if you just did it? Like
yeah,
it's like, oh yeah, I guess you could just do it, couldn't you?
yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
dared to dream.
He did, and
Yeah,
whether that dream seems to me, it seems a little screwed up, but like,
yeah.
man, who am I to take away? Who am I to take away a man's like final effort at immortality? I don't
That's
know.
right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Seth, this has been fantastic, folks. Get Llama with the Gun. If you're an Art of Darkness listener, I know you're looking for indie literature. The literary arts are alive and well. Despite reports, the novel is not dead. Llama with a Gun is proof of that. So find Seth on Twitter, Seth Augenstein. His links will be in the show notes. Please go support that book. And of course, follow the man. And I guess that's all I got. Kevin, you got
Well, we
anything?
tease no, I'm having a great time. This is a lot of fun. Get into the Telegram. We love having people in the Telegram. T.me/Art of Dark Pod, Art of Darkness listeners, some very interesting cats in there.
Mhm.
Tease the Patreon one more time, Brad. What are we
Yeah,
talking about on Patreon?
we're gonna talk about the short film, about 30-minute film that Mishima made
Mhm.
called Patriotism in the mid '60s, and we're also going to talk about a salacious biographical anecdote about Mishima's sexual predilections, and it's not about pederasty, as was mentioned earlier. It's not about that really at all. It's about
Consenting
something else.
adults. The
Okay.
consenting
Yeah.
adults.
Okay. The After Dark will be a pederasty free zone
Well, we're talking burrows late
this
next
time.
week. That will not be.
This time.
So
This time.
All over the
Thank
place.
you.
Yeah, that's
Thank you. Thank you so much, Seth. And if you want to join us for the After Dark, patreon.com/Art of Dark Pod.
Thank you so much, both of you.
Yeah.